Hi Year 7, Mr. Tapley here for your next lesson of Year 7 Humanities. This lesson we are looking at historical conservation, so protecting and maintaining all these wonderful primary sources from the past and how they relate to our heritage, our culture, our identity. Our learning intention is to develop our understanding of the Parthenon Marbles, which are a primary source from Greece, and the artifacts kept within the British Museum. We almost touched on this a couple lessons ago, more than a couple lessons. This was back in ancient Australia when we talked about Mungo Man and whether it's right to have primary sources in museums or whether it should belong to the original people. So we're coming back to that in ancient Greece. Our success criteria is to evaluate debates around conservation and archaeological artifacts and historical sites. The Parthenon Marbles, also known as the Elgin Marbles, and I'll tell you why in a minute, are a collection of marble sculptures created in classical Greece. Originally, I thought they were just like marbles, like legit marbles, like you play, anyway, but they're sculptures. These artifacts were originally attached to the Parthenon Temple and other buildings on the Acropolis of Athens. You've seen that central picture before in the slides, and that picture there is the Parthenon. So that was a temple to the goddess Athena, so very, very important. We know that religion, mythology was important to the Greek people, to their culture, and Athena was obviously the most important god in Athens. It was named after her. And this picture here gives you a good idea of where the Parthenon stands in Athens. You can see that they've placed it at the top of the city, so it's the most important building, the most important part of the city. So that's really showing you how significant it is to the Greek people. As I said, the Parthenon was dedicated to Athena, and the decorative sculptures at this site are an excellent representation of the Athenian artwork. So this was kind of created in the golden age of Athens in classical Greece, just before the Peloponnesian War, when Sparta came in and messed everything up. So it's kind of the best of Greek artwork. It's recognized as a cultural and historic symbol of ancient Greece, just like the Lake Mungo, just like Great Wall of China, Great Barrier Reef. It is one of the items on the United Nations World Heritage List, so it's super, super important. This final picture is actually a picture of the marbles, so one of the sculptures that was taken from the Parthenon. It used to be right up there at the top, and then someone just came and took it off. So, why are they also known as the Elgin Marbles? Well, I've got bad news. In 1460, Greece was conquered by the Ottoman Empire, which is now modern-day Turkey, and protection of their cultural and historical heritage was left to a foreign nation. So the Greek people didn't have a say in what happened to all these artifacts from ancient Greece. It was up to the new government, new management, which was the Ottoman Empire. So obviously, they didn't have the same connection to these artifacts, so they weren't going to protect them, to conserve them as much as the ancient Greeks, or sorry, the modern Greeks might. In 1801, so 100 years later, Earl Elgin of Britain, so there was a man who was the Earl, so a very important person, not the king or the queen, but kind of like in the same family. Earl Elgin of Britain traveled to Greece, and he removed a number of marble sculptures from the Parthenon, just went and took them. He claimed he was given permission by the Ottoman government. However, no evidence has been found supporting this claim. So despite all the number of artifacts we have, not just from ancient Greece, but from the 1800s, when the Ottoman Empire were in charge of Greece, we still can't find a piece of paper that says, I give permission to Earl Elgin to take all this stuff. So that's a bit dodgy. So some people have said he stole them. He was lying. Earl Elgin then sold the artifacts to the British government, who then placed the Elgin Marbles in the British Museum. Greece gained independence from the Ottoman Empire in 1832. They almost got there, they just missed it. However, despite repeated attempts, the British Museum refuses to return the artifacts to Athens. What I love about that is, this is a picture of the British Museum. Does it look familiar to you? So not only did they steal their stuff, they went and built a museum that looks just like the architecture from ancient Greece. How savage is that? Anyway, so There's a big debate about historical conservation, so how we protect and conserve and save past history, how we present history from the past to the present to the future. How do we save history from modern generations? So there are people who believe that we should bring it home to Greece. There are people who believe that it should stay in Britain. Significant support in terms of legal, moral, and cultural justification to return the marbles to Greece. Some of those arguments include, well, the Parthenon itself, remember, this was something that was taken from the Parthenon. It was just taken off the top there. The Parthenon itself is still in Greece, and it's incomplete after the theft of these marble statues or sculptures. To accurately represent the history of ancient Greece and the significance of this site, the artifacts need to be returned to Athens. It'd be like if someone took the top off the Eiffel Tower. It's incomplete. It's not the same monument to French culture. It'd be like if someone just kind of chiseled off a little part of Ayers Rock or Uluru. So the argument is, well, you guys have kind of created an incomplete representation of history in Greece. Give it back so we can fix it. Another argument is, well, other nations who had explorers and archaeologists and military people go in and take stuff from Greece, such as Germany, Italy, and Sweden, have actually returned artifacts that they stole or took from the Parthenon to Greece. So it's not like other people are also holding out. It's just Britain who are being mean. The new Acropolis Museum was built in Athens in 2009, very recent, and has advanced technology to protect and preserve the exhibits from damage. One of the arguments in the past was, well, we can't give it back to you guys because we're afraid that it will break. You guys won't look after it. But now we've got this state-of-the-art museum that will be able to protect it, and it's right next to the actual Parthenon. And then that final argument is, of course, that the artifacts were obtained illegally. Basically, no evidence supports claims of Earl Elgin that the government, again, who were not Greece at the time, it was the Ottoman Empire, approved of the removal of these marble sculptures. That is the Greek flag, for those of you who are not familiar. Now, arguments for keeping it in Britain. Number of arguments presented by not just British people, but historians and archaeologists supporting the British Museum's ownership of these marbles. If the sculptures are returned to Greece, this would set a precedent or an example for every other museum around the world. So you could be forcing every other museum, every other nation to return all the artifacts, all the primary sources that they acquired from other nations during war, colonization, and trade. I don't know if you guys have been to a museum. If you take out everything that was not from that original country where the museum is, it's going to be pretty empty. So that's an argument against it. Well, if we give you these back, we have to give everything back. Although no evidence can be found to prove that Earl Elgin's removal of the artifacts was legal, some have argued that the events occurred so long ago that the British Museum should not be held accountable for past crimes. So these museum artifacts have been there for hundreds of years. Obviously, the people who run the British Museum now didn't approve of stealing these things hundreds of years ago. So why are they going to be held accountable for past crimes? It'd be like if I came up to you and said, your great-great-great-grandfather stole something from me. Give me $100. You'd be like, well, no, I shouldn't have to do that. And then another argument is, well, actually, the Elgin marbles, not the Parthenon marbles, they don't just belong to ancient Greece now. They are part of a shared heritage. Again, they've been on display for hundreds of years in this museum. People have seen them coming from around the world. They've come to the British Museum to see these things, and it's been shared with visitors over generations. It's now a cultural artifact of the world. So why should we be giving it back to Greece? And then you've got that video which we did see from Ancient Australia when we talked about this sort of topic. I just really like that video. Basically, the argument for, oops, I've broken it, keeping it in Britain can be summarized with finders keepers. I just like that. Anyway, so you've got two sides of the argument there. And you've got 3 questions talking about those arguments. So complete the following activities and questions in your digital notebook. You don't need your textbook for this. You're just going off what we've seen in the class slides. So question 1. In term 1, this might seem a very long time ago when we were actually in school, can you imagine that? In term 1, we discussed the importance of culture and identity to individuals and our shared identity. Why are the Parthenon marbles important to the Greek people? So why are these things from hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years ago, why should it be given back to the Greek people? Why is it so important to them? Question 2. A museum is responsible for protecting and sharing a collection of artistic, cultural, technological, and/or historical artifacts of significance. It's a library of the world. Do you believe this education of world history, so allowing people to go there to learn about history, to experience history, is more or less important than respecting the culture and history of the original owners of these museum artifacts? So do you believe it's more important to have people being able to experience, to see these artifacts and learn about them, learn about ancient Greece? Or do you think it's more important that we respect the ancient Greek people and the modern Greek people and give them back to Greece? And then question 3 is about the specific case study that we're looking at, the Parthenon marbles. Do you believe the Parthenon marbles should remain in the British Museum, or should they be returned to Greece? Justify your response with 2 arguments. So I'm being nice and specific with this question. 2 arguments for this one, for or against Parthenon marbles going to Britain or Greece. And that's all you're doing this lesson, boys and girls. That's all you've got. Only one more lesson of new ancient Greece content, and then we've got another revision lesson, and then we've got the cat next week. So if you have any questions about this content, past content, future content, please let me know. Otherwise, best of luck. Hope you guys are well, and cheers.